Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Today I'm going to talk about sacred numbers and satanic numbers, or numerology, and what is the difference between them, and what you need to know about this, about sacred numbers, and what you need to know about satanic numbers, because we all live under the intent, the niyyah, the determination of satanic numerology. And so in order to counter that, we will be discussing some deeper things today that I normally don't discuss, but I'm going to be discussing them because I think it is extremely important that the Muslims understand what is sacred numbers and what is numerology and how to tell the distinction between the two. And of course, then we have to also discuss the issue of having a type of ta'weez or numerology that has been done by many great scholars of Islam like Shawlila Muhaddis Delbi, Mullah Zakaria rahmatullah alayhi, Mullah Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahmatullah alayhi. They have some of these numerologies in their books. So what is the basis of that? What is the history of that? And how can it be distinguished from other numerologies? And then should we be using these numbers at all in the times that we live in at all? Okay? Or does more good come out of it compared to before? Why the people before used, numerology of different sorts in regards to Quranic verses. And so, we're going to give it to you straight, but we're going to give it to you deep. So you have a deep understanding, because you have to understand how numerology is being used against you also at the same time. And then at the same time, you have to understand that the power, because Allah created, وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created all numbers. And all numbers are under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All numbers are in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so let us start with something that I think you'll find interesting and related to this. So I want to first talk about the sacredness of numbers. Okay? Because in the olden days, it's very much like, the magician looked at the stars to do magic and astrology and to predict the future. And then there was another person who was looking at the same stars, but looking at the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, this is guiding me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another person's looking at the stars, and he's not looking at it from the perspective of astrology. He's not looking at it from the perspective of astronomy, but he's looking at it in terms of constellation and directions and how I can travel in the desert without getting lost. So you can be looking at one thing from many different perspectives. So this is one of the things that we will be looking at. The same thing is that on the one side, numerology or numbers is one of those things that without which there would be no human progress. There would be no machines, there would be no computers, there would be no science, there would be no technology, there would be no maps, there would be no measurement, no weights, no nothing. But on the other side, numbers are also used against humanity. They are for humanity, and they're also against humanity. They're also sacred numbers, and they're also numbers that are used in the form of magic. And so all these things need to be understood properly. I'm going to give you one example, but I'm going to give you this example a little bit later. Okay? I'm going to show it to you that, for example, this page of the Quran, do you know? This page of the Quran was developed by one of the students of Imam Sayyid Nursi rahmatullah alayhi, one of the greatest scholars of this century, one of the greatest scholars of this century, one of the awesomest scholars of this century. Anyway, so how he lined up all the Allahs in the Quran in the way that you see it before you. You see, what he did was he took the largest ayah of the Quran, which is called Ayatul Dain. Okay, it is the ayah about the transaction of loans. He made it fit in the whole page. Okay, one whole page. And then he took the smallest surah of the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar, and made that the distance of one line. And then made the Ayatul Dain the distance of one page. And then when he aligned these two together, he got the result that you see in front of you. You see, the point is that this is all about measurements, right? It's all about numbers. And so numbers are important, like subhanAllah. And we haven't even scratched the surface yet when it comes to Quran. We have not, wallahi, we have not even scratched the surface. Okay? So now, let us look at a few more things, okay? So, I want to share with you another part of the Quran, inshallah, and so that we have a better understanding of all of this. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, okay, and this is very, very important. What I'm about to share with you is like really, I think, in some ways mind-blowing, okay? It's really, really mind-blowing what I'm about to show you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you know, about the people that would not be able to make their sacrificial sacrifice when they go to Hajj because they were stopped, okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ فَصِيَامُ ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ فِي الْحَجِّ. And whoever doesn't find his sacrificial way of doing sacrifice, he has 3 days of siyam that he has to do during the Hajj. وَسَبْعَةٌ إِذَا رَجَعْتُمْ. And 7 after you go back home. Okay? تِلْكَ أَشَرَةٌ كَامِلَةٌ. تِلْكَ أَشَرَةٌ كَامِلَةٌ. Let me repeat this. تِلْكَ أَشَرَةٌ كَامِلَةٌ. These, Allah says 3 when you're in Hajj, 7 when you go back, and then Allah repeats, that is 10 total days. 10 days complete. Now why? Why did Allah have to, Allah could have said, you know, ثلاثة أيام في الحج, 3 days in Hajj, and 7 when you go back. There was no need to say, تلك عشرات كاملة. Those are 10 days complete. Because, you see, how many digits do we have? We have 10 digits. Okay, we have 10 digits on our hands, you know, 10 fingers. Okay, keep this in mind as I talk. This is suggesting a sense of completeness and maturity of the number of 10. Okay, and it relates to the modern, you see, imagine the Roman numerals, and I'm going to show this to you in a second, but just keep this in mind. The idea that Allah emphasizes on the number 10. Okay, Allah emphasizes on the number 10. Okay, keep this in mind. You know, the modern writing system of numbers, what is it called? It's called the Arabic numbers. It's called the Arabic numbers, okay? Over here, I want to show you, for example, another example from Quran, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, you know, in Surah Yasin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَارْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مُثْنَيْنِ فَعَزَّزْنَاهُمْ بِثَالِثٍ. We sent 2 messengers and then we sent a 3rd to give them strength. Now, over here, likewise, the number 3 is seen to indicate gathering and strength. It is mentioned in the tradition 2 is the minimum, 3 is the minimum number of people for a group to form a congregation, okay? It was supposed to be 3, not 2. So we also read, with a similar reference, that we sent 2 of them, but they denied them. فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مُثْنَيْنِ فَكَذَّبُهُمَا فَعَزَّزْنَاهُمْ بِثَالِثٍ. Right? And then on the other hand, okay, the letter Jim has the abjad. Now, abjad is a special system. Okay, what is this special system? Let me share with you how this system of numbers, okay, I don't want to call it numerology because I want to call it the Arabic language was always simultaneous with numbers, okay? And just as people made no distinction between mathematical numbers, like 1 + 1 is 2, versus sacred numbers, a certain number has some sacred thing to it, like the number 7, or some other number that was bad, right? People, all of these sciences were kind of like intermingled into one another, okay? So keep this in mind. Now, how did this abjad system start? Abjad is a special system in which the Arabic language letters are connected to numbers. So I'm going to give you the history of that, okay? Very, very quickly, okay? And then we'll continue. And that is that in Yemen, okay, there were some kings and his sons. And so there still others hold, and I'm just reading this from the text of this research paper, okay? Still others hold that the numbers of the Tasam clan invented Arabic writing. They were rulers of Madian during the lifetime of Set. Upon him, peace be upon him, and our prophet be peace. There were 6 kings. Now, one opinion is there were 6 kings. Then there was that it's 1 king, but he had 7 sons, and their names were Abjad, okay, and Hawaz, and then Huti, and then Kalman, and Safas, and Qarshat, okay, and then there are others besides that. There are other, but these, like the Alif, the first 10, meaning Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, the Alif, Ba, Jim, Dal, they hold the values of 1 through 4, okay? So like this, it continues until It reaches 1,000. I'm going to show that to you in a second, but I'm just simply saying Arabic writing, which includes the letters and the numbers, started from this time, okay, according to research. And this research has been done by, just so that you're absolutely clear, okay, this is done here in the University of South Carolina, okay, of Islamic Grammatology, Ibn Turka's Letters, Metaphysics of Light. Okay, so this is just talking about one aspect of history. How these numbers and letters came together is something that existed in all the Semitic languages. It was not just Arabic, but it also existed in Hebrew. Let me show you the research for that. Here's another very large research on the issue of the Hebrew, Arabic, modern Syriac, and other writing systems are abjads. Okay. In fact, all the languages are affected by this. Like even, for example, A and Alif. Okay, Ba, Abjid, like Alif, Ba. So Alif, Ab, Jim. Jim is not there. Okay, but Dal is there. The D is there, the fourth letter. Okay, so even the English language is affected by the abjad writing system, and it's even more deeper than that, as I will show you. So what I just showed you is about writing, system development, and reform, a process. Okay, and it was research done. It was a thesis submitted for a master's degree in the University of North Dakota. Okay, talking about the abjad system, the Arabic numeral, because remember, Arabic numbering system is the numbering system right now used in the entire world. I will explain that also to you, because I will show you how the Roman numerals were compared to the Arabic numerals, and then that will give you an idea. You can see more than 7 different versions of the Semitic languages and other languages where in the olden days, before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to connect letters with numbers. Okay, so this needs to be, I'm just going to go through this booklet very quickly so you can see the different types of letters and how they have been given numbers. For example, you know, you can see here that some of the letters have been, or all the letters sometimes have been given numbers depending upon. So this is just an example. Okay, so like for example, if you can see here, like it's like they're making a branch, right, with the numbers, with the va, ain, right, and how they did that. So this was all done before the time of the Prophet. In the Jahiliyyah poetry, they used to say things to embed numbers and dates and events, and you know, in that, so it would be easy to remember. So just keep this in mind. Okay, so they were doing this long time ago, long before even Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, so when this was developed in what is called Madian, you're almost going to close to the time of Musa alayhi, but this is actually after Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, but closer to the time of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, so this is just to show you that numbers, especially when the Arab heard these numbers, who was aware of poetry, was aware of the Jahiliyyah poetry, they understood that certain numbers have a certain significance, okay? And so, likewise, the number 3 is seen to indicate gathering and strength. Why? Now he's going to give you, now based upon the abjad numbering system, okay? Which I'll explain to you in just a little bit, but just listen to this. It is mentioned in a tradition that a minimum number of a group of people to form a convey or congregation is 3, okay? And Allah mentions there were 2, and then I strengthened them with the 3rd. On the other hand, the letter Jim has the abjad value. Remember, abjid. Alif is 1, Ba is 2, Jim is 3, okay? Abjid has the value of 3 and is the first letter of the root, and the first letter of the root verb Jama'a, which means to gather, okay? To words indicate congregation, gathering, Jama'a, okay? So there is, the way they looked at it is numbers pointed to certain letters, those letters then pointed to, and this can be far-fetched sometimes, obviously, right? But sometimes it's on point. And so I'm going to give you some examples of it when it is on point, okay? So inshallah, let's continue over here. Now, very important point of history is numbers are based on 10 digits. It's called Arabic numerals. Why? Because look at Roman numerals. Imagine doing math with Roman numerals. Okay? Imagine doing like 10 times 10, let me give you this example here. See, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 in Roman numerals. You would not be able to do it because the abjad numbers are based upon a natural system, right? And they go from 1 through 9, and then from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, then 100, 200, 300. So it's based upon a metric. The metric system is the Arab system. This is known as Arabic numerals in history, okay? So, just as an example, the symbols of the Roman numerals, right? You see this clock with the Roman numerals, right? So the symbols of the Roman numerals are, symbols are 1, 5, 10, and it keeps on until it reaches, so 1, 5, 10, 50, 100, 500, and 1,000. Imagine trying to do math with these types of numbers. It's impossible. So Arabic played a big role in creating the modern world, because without the Arabic numbers, which correspond to the values of the letters that gave it the 10-digit format, okay, which I'm going to talk about. So imagine trying to do M times M, okay, 1,000 times 1,000 in the Roman numerals versus 1,000 times 1,000 in the Arabic numerals, okay. So now, what are these abjad letters, okay? So this is what we need to discuss. So now I've talked about the history of it, when it started. It was used in Jahiliyyah poetry. It is from a perspective of a person who knows the Jahiliyyah poetry and is listening to Quran, he will catch on to many of these numbers, okay? And so it is important to know, yes, there were alphabets connected with the idea of certain numbers. This existed, okay? So alif, 1, 2, alif, ba, ta, jim, dal, ha, wa, za. Okay, so this is up to 10, get it? And then from kaf to ayn, and then to Sad, okay? So these are given names. So the first 4 is given the name abjad. The second 4 are given the name of hawuz, I believe. And then like this, they're all given names to shorten them, okay? And that's why it's called abjad, because alif, ba, jim, dal has the value of 4. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, okay, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِالْمِقْدَارِ. Everything with Allah is on a certain determination of a certain measurement, okay? وَأَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عَدَدًا. And Allah has encompassed all numbers, okay? وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ كِتَابًا. And Allah has given everything a number in His book, okay? أَحْصَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَاهُ كِتَابًا. And Allah has enumerated everything in His book, okay? So all things are numbered, everything is by measurement, all things, Allah encompasses all things in His book in an enumerated way, okay? وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ كِتَابًا. Okay, so there's also a tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam I'd like to mention, in a weak tradition, okay? And this is how these things became more popular, okay? In a weak tradition we read, this is in the tafsir of Mazhari, okay? In a weak tradition we read, the Jewish scholar Huyay bin Akhtab suggesting to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the life of his community, meaning his ummah, will be short, pointing out the isolated letters, meaning alif, lam, mim, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. These added up to the value of 71. The Prophet smiled and told him there are more than that, and he recited alif, lam, mim, sad, which adds up to 161. Alif, lam, mim, ra, which adds up to 231. Alif, lam, mim, ra adds up to 271. This incident shows that the Prophet did not reject the validity of such calculations outright, and cited a few more examples for the listener. Now, some people will look at this hadith, because there's another narration of this hadith in which the Jewish person got confused, and then he just left, okay? So some people use this hadith, first of all, people criticize this hadith being weak, which is a valid criticism. Some people would criticize this hadith that, look, even though the Prophet was going from his perspective, okay, the Prophet was going from his perspective, from what he knew, and telling him. Other people say, no, this is the Prophet kind of like accepting that this is a valid way of doing things. This is why. So now, let us continue, inshallah, from here, okay? So let me show you, inshallah, over here, okay? So there's not just this abjad, right? There's also other forms of valid numbers and sacred numbers in Quran. For example, the Quran mentions the moon and sun 19 times. We've heard other things about the number 19, but I want to bring up this. Okay, Metonic circle could be one reason. It is known that there are natural 19-year cycles between the moon and the sun. That is, the full moon appears at the same position in the sky for approximately 19 years. We remarkably find, for example, that the words sun and moon have been mentioned together exactly 19 times. It turns out that another miraculous numerical codes in regards to the number, meaning other than the ones that are normally talked about, there are other ones there too. And then I just put this article up here, okay, for in case anybody wanted to see, okay. The Metonic circle is the moon's 19-year cycle, where the moon returns exactly to the same place, right, in the sky as in the sky with the same phase. Okay, an ordinary calendar is a solar calendar. It keeps dates in sync with the sun. For instance, the sun is at its highest point when we view it in such and such time. But with the lunar calendar is put back in sync and reset every 19 years. So that if there's any calculation mistakes, it will be fixed. Okay, a lunar calendar keeps the lunar calendar dates in sync. Can you imagine how Allah did that? Right? First of all, Allah makes the moon to see the different phases and the different days, and then for the whole calendar, the larger calendar, Allah puts it back in sync every 19 years. Okay, and it just so happened the Quran mentions the sun and the moon together 19 times. Is that by chance, or is there, Allah is the one who created all numbers, and Allah is the one who said things in His books, meaning Quran, meaning other books too, but especially. So numbers are sacred, and even Allah takes the oath by the even, وَالشَّفْعِ وَالْوَتْرِ. Allah takes the oath by the even numbers and by the odd numbers. Okay. Now about the number 19, the fundamental, the fundamental point about number 19 is what? That about number 19, the fundamental pillar is that Islamic faith is the unity of Allah, is the tawheed of Allah. The number of times the word wahid, which means one, is used to refer to the unity of God is 19. Incidentally, the abjad value of the word wahid, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, the abjad value of wahid is also the number 19. Okay, so this is it's not just one way of looking at it. It is actually multiple ways of looking at things in a way that you're like, oh, there's many ways of looking at these whole issues. Okay, now let me show you this other one, which you'll find again interesting in regards to the abjad system. Okay, and I'm going to give you different types of examples of different like sacred numbers becoming sacred in different ways. Okay, consider that the geometrical value of 57 for the word hadith, the iron. Okay, the chapter named Al-Hadid, iron, turns out to be the 57th chapter in the Quran. So the abjad value, okay, the abjad value of iron in the indefinite form without the al in the beginning, okay, is 26, which turns out to be precisely the atomic number of iron. In addition, the word iron occurs only once in that chapter, which is the 26th verse. Such marvels of the Quran there are myriad of them. There are so many of them, right? Let me just share with you one more of these, okay? Over here. A different type of numerical code found in the Quran is the distance between certain words. The distance that is measured in terms of the number of words or letters between two given words. The story of the people of the cave in the chapter of Kahf, for example, the duration of their sleep in the cave is given to 309, okay, years. It turns out the story in the Quran is narrated in 309 words. That is, there are precisely 309 words between the two words labithu that occurred in verse 1812 and 1826, from the beginning of the narration to the end, including these two words and counting the conjunction word wow as a separate word. Okay, so there are many ways of looking at the idea of sacred numbers. Okay, so now I want you to also notice for a second. So now these abjad, hauz, Hut'i. All these were people who were either kings or sons of a king on whose name these numbers were initially built. Okay, so let me actually do this. Okay, so now let me move my camera here so you can see. So Alif is 1, Ba is 2, Jim is 3, Dal is 4, and going all the way up to Ya, which is 10. Then it goes to 11, all the way to 20. Okay, I'm sorry. It goes 1 through 10 to Ya, and then Kaf, Lam, Mim, Nun is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. This is the metric system used today for all calculations of all things. So that's what makes everything possible. That's what makes calculation possible. Trying to imagine yourself trying to calculate something on the Roman numerals, for example. And I can give you many other examples because it's a whole book on the significance written by a non-Muslim. It's called The Mind and Quantum Physics. It talks about how our 10 digits of our finger is like was the key to success, in a sense that without that metric system we wouldn't have been able to do anything. Imagine a number that like its first sequence, like our first sequence ends at 9 and then starts 10, 20, 30, right? And then ends at 90, which is another 9, then 900, and goes to the next level. But there are tribes in Africa, their numbering system ends at 2. And then they have to repeat, you know, like I'm giving you an example, like let's say Ta is 1 and 2 is 2. So now if they want to say 4, they have to say 2, 2, okay? Because that's just the way it is. That's just how they had numbers. It was the Arabic numerals that allowed this metric system to come into existence. Now, let me share with you something very important that regarding this system of the abjad, okay? And so Badi'u Zaman Nursi Rahmatullah alayh, several miraculous events where a phrase or a verse in the Quran contains reference to certain significant events in our times through its abjad value. So Sayyid Nursi Rahmatullah alayh used this in his, especially his book called, I think, the first Ray. Okay, Badi'u Zaman listed several miraculous examples where a phrase or a verse in the Quran contains reference to certain significant events in our times through its abjad value. For example, he explained that the phrase تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ, striking them with stones, in verses 105.4 points out to the use of warplanes for bombing of World War II that wiped away much of Europe. The abjad value of the phrase تَرْمِيهِمْ بِحِجَارَةٍ turns out to be 1359, which gives the year, meaning that's the Hijri calendar, okay, and which gives the year 1941 when converted to solar calendar years. The chapter 105, the elephant, gives a brief account of the people of the elephant and how their strong army was utterly defeated by flocks of birds carrying stones in the beaks and their claws. Okay, the content of the chapter as well as the wordings point to mass killing during World War II, according to Sayyid Nursi Rahmatullah alayh. Nursi's treatise, called the First Ray, right, lists several other incidences where the abjad value of a verse foretold the date of a future event in a figurative way, that something similar will happen. Okay, and it's also interesting that when it's talking about Ashabul Fil, it's talking about these were Abraha was a Christian, a right-wing Christian, which is another. We're going through another phase of the same history repeating itself in a different way. I'm not going to go into that right now, but this was. Again, remember what I started this discussion, I talked about the Quran where all the Allahs are lined up. This was done by one of the students, Sayyid Nursi Rahmatullah alayh. Okay, and so he's not just imagining things. I mean, he's able to show that there is a balance and a system and a measurement within the Quran that makes it a valid Quran. Okay, let's look at another example of this. اقتربت الساعة وشق القمر. I wish I had the Arabic dictionary to show you this, but the word shaqqa, of course the Prophet pointed to the moon and it split. But it can point to other things too. So اقتربت الساعة وشق القمر, for example, shaqqa also means to dig. Okay, just so you know, look up any Arabic dictionary, you'll see it. Okay, so when you look at this, اقتربت الساعة وشق القمر, that the hour has come near and the moon has been dug. So this is like forecasting that time where machines will go to the moon and bring back the moon rocks. Okay, and so they did that. Okay, and so اقتربت الساعة, okay, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. And if you bring all those numbers together of the abjad numeral system, when Allah chose the Quran in Arabian غير ذي عوج, the Quran in Arabic without any crookedness, then everything that was associated with the Arabic language came with it. And what came with it was also these numbers and this system that is now used throughout the whole world. Okay? So, when you added the total of this ayah is 1390. Georgian calendar, 1969. It is the year that man went to the moon. Okay? So, now, if your book has been changed, okay? If your book has been changed, if it is no longer valid, and because Hebrew also has this system, okay? Like I said, Semitic languages have this system. And if the Hebrew has this system, and they are using this system, then their book, because it has been changed, what will happen is their numerical systems will give the wrong results. And they're trying to do everything based upon these wrong results. Wrong results, wrong numbers, and therefore it is the opposite of sacred. Okay? It is not even mundane. Okay? It is it's the opposite of sacred. Okay? Because they have tempered the book. Like, they can never do this, what I'm showing here in terms of the measurement and the design of the internal Quran. They can never do this. They can never achieve this. Okay? And because they can't achieve this, this is all out of balance, all whacked out. Okay? Their numerology is all wrong. And they're going to lead, and they do, I don't know if you know this, but Jewish people do everything according to numerology. The whole Kabbalah system is based upon numerology. They name their companies based upon numerology. Okay? And all of that's based upon numerology, and I'm going to come to that. Now, the other thing I want to deal with is a very important question. Well, is it valid then to use this abjad system in a ta'weez? Okay? Is it valid to use these in a ta'weez? And I'm going to answer that question in two different ways. So, obviously people have used it, right? And they've used the numbers. I'm going to give you the reasons why they've used the numbers. Because in the olden days, they didn't have that much ink and pen. And they had to write as much as possible in a short form, and where a person could carry it with, like a necklace, like an amulet, right? Where they can, and by the way, the Sahaba didn't do it, but the Tabi'een, they did do it. Okay? The general rule is, if it's not shirk, you're allowed to do it. But besides that, the Tabi'een had a general principle that if somebody can read Quran for themselves, they should read Quran for themselves. But for the children, they would allow them to wear the writings of Quran and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, they had two problems in the olden days. Number one was the lack of paper and the lack of ink. And the third was the being worried that somebody would disrespect the verses of the Quran. And so therefore, they came up with this system. Now, does the system work or not? I'm not going there. It's an ijtihadi issue. Meaning there's an ijtihad because the Arabic numerals are connected to numbers. So if I say, I think it's 786 for Bismillah, if I don't remember correctly, please correct me. But let's say the number for Bismillah is 786. If I say 786, that doesn't mean Bismillah. But when you're writing it as a writing system, because the abjad is a writing system, when you write it down with the intent, and I'm going to show you one scholar who has a different opinion than me on the issue of the holding the ta'weez and so on and so forth. I'm going to show you who this is. He's a Naqshbandi scholar and has done tremendous work for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I will respect him no matter what, even if I agree or disagree is really secondary. Okay? So now, let me show you something interesting. So even when you say 666 is the mark of the beast, right? You have to remember that they are using their systems to talk about 666. Okay? And so, like when they come up with a certain vaccine and call it 666, okay? They're using their own systems to do this. And they're doing this based upon a different plan, which I'm not going to go into right now. But here's another example, right? So over here, for example, he compares the name God with the word nature. Okay? And he says, This is why Kabbalah, which is Jewish magic, points out the numerical value of Elohim, which is God, and Hativa, which is nature, are equal. So God is nature, nature is God. There's no difference between them. Okay, that's their understanding of God. Okay, so that is when you get into numerology, is when Shaitan has taken you away from the correct balance, and according to the ratio that Allah has made things into your wrong numbers. Okay, into your wrong numbers. And so let me show you one more example of this. What is the reason for the custom to give a gift in multiples of 18? Okay, so like we have the 19, they have the 18. So this is how Shaitan plays. Okay, so this is how Shaitan plays. And so you have to be, now how does this affect you? Now I'm going to show you how this affects you by showing you a difference of opinion issue, an issue of difference of opinion, but also at the same time understanding where this brother is coming from. Okay, and so this brother tells you to make like a ta'weez in a certain way, and he says fitnatul abjad, numerology. Okay, Allah designed the universe as such that everything can be measured and calculated, he says, right? He says that the Quran, that in this Quran, people of wisdom know the relationship of these numbers, while people of evil use them as sihr. Okay, he says, I don't know which exact verse he's referring to, but either way, from Wikipedia, abjad numbers, okay, are a decimal numeral system in which the 28 letters in the alphabet are assigned numerical values. They have been used in the Arabic-speaking world since before the 18th century, when the numerals were adopted by Jews. And this, by the way, the Jewish numeral system comes from Babylonia, right? Where the magic began. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى الْمَلَكَيْنِ بِبَابِلَ وَهَارُوتَ وَمَارُوتَ. Now, what Shaitan does is what he did with Sulaiman. He took the kirama and the mu'adza, the miracles of Sulaiman, and tried to convert it into magic. And this is kind of what's happening nowadays with a lot of what's going on, because now this magic numbers are being used, and these the people that know how to properly use the abjad system they're being confused with one another, and sometimes it's very confusing because you don't know the source. Okay, anyway, so I just want you to understand his perspective. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him is a secondary issue. Okay, like I said, it's an ijtihadi issue. Why is it an ijtihadi issue? It's an ijtihadi issue because so many great scholars like Shawlila Muhaddis Dilmi rahmatullah alayh, like Mawlana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahmatullah alayh, okay, Mawlana Zakaria rahmatullah alayh, many great scholars of Africa, of the Asian subcontinent, even of the Middle East, many great scholars use this abjad system. Okay, yes, magicians also used it. That's why I said in the beginning, you can look at the stars to do magic, astrology, or you can look at the stars to find Allah. And this is where knowledge is fitna. Knowledge is fitna, and numbers are fitna, because you can use numbers to create bombs. You can use numbers to measure things and to cure people in medicine, right? Or you can use numbers to give someone poison. Okay, numbers is one of those things that is really a fitna. Okay, anyway, in the abjad system, the first letter of the alphabet, alif, is used to represent 1, ba is used to represent 2, individual letters also represent 10, hundreds, ya for 10, kaf for 20, qaf for 100. Okay, the word abjad derives from the first 4 letters, okay, in the Semitic alphabet, including the Phoenician alphabet, the Aramaic alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and other scripts of the Semitic languages. These older alphabets contain only 22 letters, stopping at ta, numerically equivalent to 400. The Arabic abjad system continues at this point with letters not found in other alphabets, going up to 900 or 1,000. The fitna of sihr using abjad is a heavy one. If a sahir does sihr on an item you own, the jinn will attack you as long as that item is in your house and from its attachment to you. So get rid of it, and it will get rid of the jinn, because that is causing the attachment. Okay, So he's just mentioning this, that this happens. Somebody gave you, you had like a mouse, you had a computer, okay? You go to someone's website, and this can happen where he will like have evil intent for anybody who comes to his website in the sense of control, okay? So then that, the shayateen will be helping that person. Just as an example, the fitna of sihr using abjad is a heavy one. The sahir does sihr on an item you own. The jinn will attack you as long as the item is in your house and from its attachment to you. So get rid of it. It will get rid of the jinn because that is causing the attachment. Sihr done with numerals relating to you, like your date of birth and measurements, is much more difficult to deal with because you can't change those, and the jinn is coming at you from the perspective of the numbers attached to you. By the way, people that have schizophrenia, multiple personality, people affected by jinns, they're obsessed with numbers. They're obsessed with numbers. Ask anybody affected by jinns, will tell you, they were just looking at things from a numbers perspective. I don't know why, but this is the case. This is true, okay? Now, so now when in a certain company's database you're there, okay, in a certain company like Starbucks your credit card is there, okay, in a certain company that where your credit card information is, your passport information is, your different forms of information is, all that, not just pictures, all that can be used. Those numbers can be used to hurt you if those numbers are somehow connected to you. Your social security number can be used to hurt you. Your passport number can be used to hurt you. Your driver's license number can be used to hurt you. So this is part of magic. Magic uses numbers, okay? Magic is used to connect things between people and persons and so on and so forth. The following ta'weez, now he's telling you why he's giving you a ta'weez. The following ta'weez will help this fitna and its jinn, which it can burn. In the words of these sahirin who by now understand the nature of what they do in this age of science, all sihr is changing things in accordance with your intent. Listen to what he's saying. All sihr is changing things in accordance with your intent. This is what part of it is, like the evil eye, right? Part of it is the evil intent. Part of it is working with jinns against someone, okay? Using the abjad numbers is just an extension of that to help focus your intent. So when you're using it and you're writing it, it's like you're focusing and you're creating intention, okay? Today, all a skilled sahir has to do, the sahir has to do is place their intent upon something to create sihr, because it's already impure, right? Whether it is a company or company database, the bank accounts are full of shayateen, okay, and they're beating the people up, okay, and so now you put your money in a bank, and now shaitan has a door to you to beat you up, okay. Literally, this is their crude way of explaining how your thoughts are made of subatomic particles. Now, this Sheikh Rami, is big about quantum physics, subatomic particle consciousness, and subatomic particles. He's big on this, very, very big. Okay, so he has academic papers on his website on this issue, like very, very deep academic papers. This is the crude way of explaining how your thoughts are made of subatomic particles, and they interact with the subatomic particles around you. From there, manipulate the forces of the universe. Okay, but that is the crux of it. The evil eye works the exact same way, except it is according to your desires and not your logical thoughts. Okay, to make matters this easy for them, it never used to be so. They have set up the structures and organizations in the world to achieve that, which people now secretly subscribe to, in order to make the world bend to its new synthetic reality. This temporary delusion, this temporary delusion, which will vanish as soon as the society ceases to exist. That is the nature of all false things. They are temporary because they don't change the universe. They are just erecting an ecosystem within it. Okay? So the truth has come. Remember, the Tower of Babel. Allah in the Bible said He destroyed it because it would allow those people to now do whatever they wanted. Today, all the sihr has to do, all a sahir has to do, is to place their intent upon something like an evil eye with your thoughts. This is how easy or with their thoughts. This is how easy they have made this for themselves. Read these verses about the Tower of Babel in the Bible. He's giving you an example, as if it is talking about the modern day. Its people and its skyscrapers, which give the spiritual power to achieve all of this. Skyscrapers are a big part of this. I won't go into that right now, but now the whole world had one language, i.e. English, like today. So the Bible has this passage. Think of it as not the words of Allah, but it's talking about at some time in history this happened in the past, and the same thing happening now. Okay, the whole world had one language, a common speech, capitalism, business, westernization. People moved eastward. They found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone, and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that they may make a name for themselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, as one people speaking the same language, they began to do this, and nothing they planned to do will be impossible for them. Allah was not against organization. The Empire of Rome existed at this time, but what the tower would help them accomplish as one people. So Shaitan wants you to keep building, go higher and higher. Okay? And so he says, inshallah, write the following in a book and draw a rough circle or rectangle around it. Why? Because he's saying you have to make intent. By the way, the psychologist Carl Jung talked about something very, very similar. He talked about that if you draw something within a circle, he used a specific word, which I don't remember right now, Carl Jung, but if you draw something within a circle, it has the intent of therapy, like it has a therapeutic effect. So that's the opposite of that, okay? So like, for example, here, if you now look at what he tells you to write, right? And he tells you to write all the bad things, Abdul Kufr, Abdul Sahir, Abdul Dijjal, Abdul Jisasa, and all of these bad things. In Arabic, if you can, these things are sources of power for fitna, and they're used in the accusations against the subject. They will bring things into the open if the accusation holds against them. It will essentially destroy their power. He's saying, so if you make the intent against them and write them in a piece of paper, right? And then you write some verses of the Quran, okay? And then the fitna and then you write down these fitnas, okay, the name of these fitnas in that paper, and write down these verses, right? And then that will, when the Prophet was asked what are the main signs of the hour, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave two signs as representing the end of the universe. Parents giving birth to rebellious children all over the world, okay? This is because when somebody has an evil intent upon a child, it has a very fast effect. Because why? Because of where we live, okay? And how we live, and the riba that's affected us, and all the other curses that affected us, and the evil intent of the people that's affected us. People want rebellious children. They want anarchy in society. This is their intent. This is what they want, okay? Competing in skyscrapers, understanding the latter's meaning from the Tower of Babel, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam understood the reasons of Allah. Tall buildings give spiritual authority to the corrupt. It is one of the reasons they are banned in Islam. Omar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu had a fatwa that in his khilafah no one was able to build beyond a ceiling. One-story building only. Okay? By the way, that's one of his fatwas. Okay? Now, what is my point? Now, this is a very knowledgeable scholar. Okay? He's written this very, very important book, The Syrian Uprising and the Signs of the Hour. Very, very important book. And so he is for this. Now, let me now come to the other side of the story. So you get the entire picture of the ijtihad. Okay? Now, I can say, and many other scholars can say, look, there was a time where this was good, but now because evil is using it, we should not use it. Because now more of the evil people are using this, so now we should stop using this, we should use other means. And other scholars will say, no, we should continue to use this, okay? And other scholars will say, no, the better ijtihad is to leave this. Some scholars will be for it, some scholars will be against it. If you remember when I interviewed Mullah Abdul Latif is essentially against using this anymore. some of the Muslim jinns I talked to, they're also saying nowadays it's better to not do something that creates doubt and creates, because the Quran is there, it's there for everyone to use, so it's better maybe not to do it. But what about the scholars of the past? Well, they did it at a time where it was not being used for evil as such, okay? And they did it at a time where it was the need, because there was lack of paper, lack of ink, you didn't know what people would do with it, so you put it in the intent of the ayahs and the intent of the verses of the Quran there. And that was considered, and that should give you an example. Even that little bit of intent in that piece of paper that was written by numbers was powerful enough to get rid of whatever it was before. Okay? And now we live in a very, very different time where we need the real, in my opinion, I'm giving my ijtihad, we need as much as possible the absolute real thing, to hammer it strong and strong and strong and strong, because we live in a very, very dangerous time, a time of great fitan. And so, but no one should ever doubt or speak against the scholars of the past that used this method at that time, based upon their needs, based upon their situation, with the intent, with the good intents that they had. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand. And inshallah ta'ala, I want you to keep in mind that as every time you give anyone any of your numbers, anytime you can give someone your credit card, anytime, you know, you have that Starbucks logo with that lady, right? And every time you give Starbucks, the Zionists, you know, Starbucks is a big Zionist company. Every time you give Starbucks your money, you know, they have your information and they have a certain intent, and they have the intent to bend this world to their will. And that is very, very clear how they plan to do it, but I'm not going to go into that right now. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.